Okay, so I'm going to read the first paragraph on how I would read this on the test. And I'm going to go ahead and start a stopwatch too. So not to pay attention to, but just so afterwards we know even how long this took. So the Japanese American sculptor I.N. 1904 to 1988 was an artist who intuitively asked and responded to deeply original questions. Okay, so this sculptor I.N. intuitively asked, that means like on his own he asked and responded to deeply original questions, so new things. So he must have been really curious. I.N. and I have a lot in common. He might well have become a scientist within a standard scientific discipline, but he instead became an artist who repeatedly veered off at wide angles from the well-known courses followed by conventional talented artists of both the traditional and modern schools. That sentence is like 17 lines long. So we're saying that because he intuitively and responded to questions, you wouldn't be surprised if he became a scientist in a specific discipline, but instead he became an artist, but like went way off of like the norm of what was like conventionally followed by like the talented artists of that time in both traditional and modern perspective. The story behind one particular sculptor typifies this aspect of his creativeness. Oh, sculpture. Okay, so there's a story behind one particular sculpture that just demonstrates this aspect of his creativeness. So we're going to go into that example probably. I bet they're going to tell us about this example of this sculpture now that's going to show us why he is veering off the path. All right, so who wants to go first and do the second paragraph? Just how do you see how much I'm engaged with this text?
Yeah.
I spent a lot of time on it. How long are we at? We are at 2 minutes, but I know this, and that was challenging, but now it's going, the next two paragraphs, we won't probably have to slow down quite as much because we'll be able to kind of put it into the buckets a little bit faster. All right, you go, Gaia.
All right. By his early 20s, and sculptures showed such exquisite comprehension of human anatomy and deft conceptual realization that he won a fellowship for traveling Europe. So in his early 20s, his sculpture had a lot of, like it seemed like he really knew the human anatomy very well, that he won an award for it to traveling Europe. After arriving in Paris in 1927, and asked the Romanian-born sculptor Constantin Brancusi if he might become a student. So he went to Paris and he asked if he could become somebody's student. Mm-hmm. When Brancusi said no, he never took students. Noguchi asked if he needed a stone cutter. He said no, but he asked if he could be the stone cutter, and Brancusi said yes. Noguchi cut and polished stone from Brancusi in his studio, frequently also polishing Brancusi's brass and bronze sculpture. So what he did was he also polished the brass and bronze sculptures. Noguchi, with his scientist mind, pondered the fact that sculptures through the ages had relied exclusively upon negative light, that is, shadows, for their conceptual communication. Okay, so he was wondering, so he was thinking about why, I guess, or he noticed that sculpturists, they rely on negative light, that means shadows, to communicate.
Mm-hmm. Precisely so, because, and so he's saying like because of his scientific mind. So when it refers to a scientific mind, scientist's mind, what are we referring back to?
The first paragraph, when his
yes, having that intuitive mind. So yeah. So with his mind, he pondered that fact that why were they like exclusively? So exclusively is a really strong word. Why were they always specifically relying on negative light or that shadows for their conceptual communication? Precisely. Oh, sorry, you can keep going. But I think that's really important to pay attention.
It seemed like he came up with a hypothesis himself because he said that is shadows in a sense. It seemed like he was trying to come up with like a hypothesis, like.
Well, I think we're gonna get yes.
Well, okay, great.
We're gonna get to it because we cut off half sentence, but yes.
Yeah.
I'll finish this sentence really hard. I'm gonna go ahead and finish this. Okay, so relied exclusively upon negative light. So that is shadow. So negative light and shadows. When we have the double hyphen, that's just giving us the definition of what the negative light is. And Guy completely picked up on that. For their conceptual communication. So what is their they're referring to?
The sculptures.
The sculptures.
Yes, for their conceptual communication, precisely because no metals other than the expensive non-oxidizing gold could be relied upon to give off positive light reflections.
Okay. Yeah.
So we're saying that we relied exclusively upon the shadows because we didn't have this material that could be relied upon to give off positive light reflections. So what are you picturing? Okay, never mind, we won't go. All right, Mel, you do the third paragraph.
Okay. So Anne wanted to create a sculpture that was purely reflective. So that's what he wanted to create, a sculpture that was going to be reflective of what he
That
just
was
came up with.
completely reflective,
Yeah.
right?
Completely reflective, yes. In 1929, after returning to the United States, he met the architect and philosopher R.B. Fuller, offering to sculpt a portrait of him. So in 1929, he returned back to the US and he met a architect and a philosopher, and he basically offered to sculpt a portrait of him. When Fuller heard of ideas regarding positive light sculpture, he suggested use chrome nickel steel, which Henry Ford, through automotive research and development, had just made commercial available for the first time in history. So basically, when the architect heard about ideas regarding this like positive light sculptures that we talked about in paragraph 2, he suggested that he use like this type of steel that was used by Henry Ford, that was through a research of automotive and like development, and had just became commercial in the, for the first time in history.
Okay.
I guess.
So yes. But one thing that we can pay attention to is whenever we have the double commas, all this in between here is additional information, but it's not the main subject of the sentence, right? So if we were struggling, we could say he suggested using chrome nickel that had just made commercially available for the first time in history. The most important part of that sentence is that it just became available, right?
Right.
What's in between there is like we can now go back and read that detail. The additional detail is Henry Ford made it available. Why is this important so far? Because like, what problem does this solve?
The fact that, go ahead, no.
Like, why is it?
Yes,
why do we even include that with Henry Ford through automotive because what was a problem that now with this new material might not be a problem?
The negative light issue, right?
But
it's the fact that they were too expensive.
Yes.
Okay.
So I think I'm predicting why we're including that Henry Ford thing is because, we have like, maybe it won't be as like costly as that.
This is right there.
No, you're okay. No, you're
right.
No, that's what this is why we go slow on that daily passage to become better readers. Okay, so you can read that. Oh, hey, and look at that lax what that next sentence says. You didn't even need to predict it.
Right here, finally.
That's how intuitive I've become, where you literally start predicting what the future is going to say.
Right here, finally, was a permanently reflective surface, economically available in massive quantities. Awesome. Yeah, so basically, just saying what we said, it become more basically inexpensive.
All right, you have the next one, Gaia.
Okay, in sculpting his portrait of Fuller, Anne did not think of it as merely a shiny alternative model of traditional negative light sculpture. So when he did the portrait of Fuller, he didn't just think it was something different from the negative light sculptures. What he saw was that completely reflective surfaces provide a fundamental invisibility of surface like that of early still waters. Okay, so what he saw is that these reflective surfaces, they kind of resembled like still water, in that they were completely like reflected. Like they, it's like there was no surface whose presence can be.
So what, like, that's like, so when I'm picturing that, I'm thinking, like, have you ever ever been on a really early in the morning and you look out onto like a pond or something? I can only think of like Scotland, like it's just so pure, and you look out and like, or like, have you ever seen like a puzzle where the like sky reflects into the pond because it's so clear and pure? It's like a perfect mirror. That's what I'm picturing when I read that. It's just that like perfectly still morning, and I'm like, oh, look how pretty, like nothing's to be bothered. Anyways, okay, continue.
Whose presence can be apprehended only when objects, ships examples, are reflected in them. Okay, so pretty much like the presence, like you can actually tell that the sculpture is there because you see the reflection of other things.
Yeah, when you're looking into it, I think of like the Chicago bean.
That's what I was
Right.
just thinking about that. I was like
when you said that, I was like, what do you look in? Yeah, because you walk out like up like back or way, it's a sculpture, but when you get up close, like you see you and like, yeah, it's fun.
Mm-hmm. I'm in Chicago, so I know all about it.
It's not that fun. I'm just kidding.
Not that fun. No.
Okay, seaplane pilots making offshore landings in dead calm water cannot tell where the water is and must glide in, waiting for the unpredictable touchdown. Okay, seaplane making offshore landing. Sorry, I'm repeating. Cannot tell where the water is and must glide, waiting for. Okay, so when the pilots like they're making landings, offshore, they can't tell where the water is.
Yeah, because it's so reflective. It's so they're like, wait, is this the ground or what? Like, yeah.
Noguchi's conceived a similar invisible sculpture, okay, hidden in and communicating through the reflections of image surrounding. So that's what his sculpture did. So it's just, it communicated like by other things reflected into it.
Mm-hmm.
Then only the distortion of familiar shapes in the surrounding environment could be seen by the viewer. The viewer's awareness of the invisible sculpture's present dimensional relationship would be derived only secondarily. Okay. So yeah, so like the first thing that they pay attention to is the surrounding things are reflected. It's the actual structure and dimension of the thing would come later.
That's like this. That's the second thing you notice. Right? Like first you're like, oh, look at this, and then you realize you like take a step back and you see that it's a sculpture.
Yeah.
All right, Mel, you got the last one.
Even after this stunning discovery, Anne remained faithful to his inquisitive nature. At the moment when his explorations had won critical recognition of the genius of his original and fundamental conception, and proceeded to the next phase of his evolution. So basically, just summarizing this, he kept remaining faithful to like his dean nature. And also says like at the moment his exploration had won like this big recognition, like when people start to like really notice him and
like once he became like the GOAT,
like famous, like the GOAT of that, he still kind of like proceeded until like this next phase of having more innovative ideas and methods.
Yeah, and where does that connect back to then?
Like the first paragraph.
Yeah,
right?
because what is he driven by? He's not driven by success or money. What he's driven by being intuitive or being curious. I think of him as being this like curious, like that kid that's always just like always solving problems and always wondering what if or why or like
which is like a scientist.
Yeah. So after I read a passage, I asked myself, what was the main point? And so main point is, why did the author write this? So go ahead and like think silently for like 15 seconds. All right, what do you think, Mel?
I think he wrote this to highlight the importance of a person who, a sculptor who look at like the sculpts in many different aspects, like not just one particular perspective. And he gave us like some examples of like how he did that, how he didn't like in a sense tap into like originality in a way, like how he was in a sense abstract.
So one that we can all, I think the person definitely wrote this article to tell us about IN, right? There's more to it, but first point, like this obviously like there's not like some parallel that we're drawing, like because of this we can now think this, like no, this is definitely just to tell us about IN. But what did the author want us to know about IN, Gaia?
That he had this really inquisitive mind, and that's what drove him to do very like unconventional things, almost like he was always looking for the next thing.
Yes, because it says here the story behind one particular, so it gives us an example or a story that shows just how creative he was or why he was creative.
Right.
Awesome. All right. So
that's why I kind of sense of like not being like original. That's kind of like
no, you weren't there. You were just wordy.
I'm very wordy. She's more straight. I get very wordy, but like my mind is there. I'm there.
Awesome. Oh no, it happened in our other lesson the other day too about that one question. You're like, that's just what I said. I was like, that is, I mean, it might have been what you said, but it's not what I said. What question
right.
was that?
Can you guys see my dog?
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. So in this first, so I'm a big believer in predicting answer choices. Do you currently predict answer choices, Gaia?
Sometimes not. I do have a question before we go into the question.
Okay, so this one here. In saying that no metals other than the expensive non-oxidizing gold could be relied upon to give off positive light reflections, lines 25 to 27, the author draws a distinction between. So I don't read these answer choices yet. I go back to the line and find where it's at. And I read it. There we go.
Do you read the sentence up from it and the sentence from it?
I go there first to see where it's at. So 25 to 27.
Mm-hmm.
And we're trying to figure out what draws a distinction between. So what are we drawing a distinction between? For their conceptual communication, precisely because no metals other than the expensive non-oxidizing gold could be relied upon to give off positive light reflections. So I predict my answer. What do I think that they're drawing the distinction between?
Wouldn't it be the distinction between the sculptures that are in the shadows? What do you think? That's not right.
Well, there should be something else than that because they're drawing a distinction between.
Oh, between. Okay. Mm-hmm.
Let me just read. No metals in the mix, it could be related one to get positive light reflection. The other is between. Is it like between like the ones that are being used negative light?
And that's what
Oh, is that what you said? Negative light.
That's in the shadows. That's kind of what I meant. Like negative light in the shadows.
Yeah, they're the same thing. We're drawing. Right. We're drawing a connection between the ones that like we use the shadows and those that could be relied upon to give off positive light reflections, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right.
So these expensive ones and then generic.
Right.
So both, okay, go ahead and try to answer this one and let me know what your answer is. But wait, like I want you both to be able to get to the answer before you share. Do you guys have an answer?
Kind of. I'm in between two.
Yeah.
Oh, right. Okay, first pick one.
Okay.
What one would you pick?
I'm kind of A.
Okay, and what would you say, Mel?
See, I was between A, but then I saw certain applications too, and it kind of threw me for a loop.
Okay, we'll go over them, but tell me what your answer is.
I guess A. I'm kind of undecisive.
Okay.
So I guess I saw A.
What was your other option, guys?
C.
Okay. Let's start with E. So are we trying to draw a distinction between A highly reflective metal that was acceptable to both traditional and modern sculptors, and highly reflective metals who's used, no, like we're not drawing a distinction between two different highly reflective metals, right?
Right.
Right.
All right. D, a highly reflective sculpture material that, because it is a metal, is long lasting, and a non-metallic metals that are highly reflective, like no. We don't even bring up something being
Long lasting.
non-metallic, right?
Right.
Let's skip over C for a second. B, a naturally highly reflective metal that was technically suited for sculpture, and other highly reflective metals that were not so suited. Why is that one wrong?
Because is it the fact that it's trying to show the distinctions between just two highly reflective metals?
No,
Or no, that's not, no.
wrong.
Oh.
But it's saying unnaturally highly reflective.
Yes. There's
Naturally.
yeah,
Oh,
we
okay.
don't talk about something being naturally and some that's not like unnatural. I don't know what the difference is. Okay, so let's break down A and C. A metal that can be moderately reflective and so this is really, so when in doubt, by the way, go mild on reading comp.
Mm-hmm.
Metal that can be moderately reflective, so at least like decently reflective in any application, and metals that can be made highly reflective but only in certain applications.
That's what threw me, the certain
That's
applications
not what's
part.
happening. We're not saying that, hey,
Oh.
this one is like decently reflective in all applications, and this other is highly reflective in like at least these certain situations.
Right.
God.
Like if I was going to rephrase this, I would say we're talking about metals that you have to use the shadows, and ones that are like amazing but expensive. All right, so let's look at C. Metals that can be made highly reflective but lose their reflective properties over time, and a metal that does not similarly lose its reflective properties.
Right.
Because the second part of this is pretty easy. That's the really good one, right? The non-oxidizing gold.
Mm-hmm.
But how do we support that can be made highly reflective, but we lose these properties over time?
Oh, because there's Polish.
The
Oh,
polish.
Polishing them.
but I don't, the thing, but they're just not reflective.
Well, they're like, have you ever like shine something and it become like you want it to be shiny and nice, but you have to keep shining it for it to be reflective?
Oh, I was under the assumption that it's just not reflective at all. But it's relying on negative light, so why would it be reflective?
Well, they're relying on the negative light for the conceptual communication.
But they're still reflective.
Like somewhat, but it's not like they're not
Oh.
communicating based like something like the other things that are completely reflective. They're basing they're communicating just through the reflection, because they become what the object is.
Got it. Okay.
Where these communicate through negative light, so they have to use negative light to maybe create the image. But that doesn't mean that they're completely not reflective, because he was polishing the brass, the brass and the bronze, and that's what made him ponder this question. So whenever it says these items that are doing this, it's referring to the brass and bronze sculptures.
Okay.
Such a tough passage. Okay, so 17 you can't predict, because how do you know the questions? How I handle these is the passage provides information sufficient to answer which one of the following questions. Instead of focusing completely on the right answer, I immediately cross off wrong ones. I view every answer choice as wrong until it proves to me that it's right.
Mm-hmm.
So go ahead and try this one. And if I'm not sure, I skip over it. I don't waste time like checking every single answer, because what if I get to one that I know for certain and I don't have to go back for?
Okay. Could you go up real quick, please?
Yes.
Oh, it's all blurry.
Oh, there you go.
Oh shit, yeah. Okay. Yeah, I was like, it's blurry. In the course of his career.
And I'm sorry. You can go down.
Move it down. There you go.
Yeah. Oh, I can't see the last paragraph.
So high maintenance. Got an answer?
Yeah.
What are your answers?
I had picked D.
What did you say, Mel?
For some reason, I was between A and D. I'm between A and D, but I could be wrong about A.
Okay, cool. So once again, reading
Like-
comp, when in doubt, think mild. And so when I read over these, I didn't know for some of them until I got to the right answer. But A, in what way did N so first begin to acquire? That was what I like, if I was in my head, would have circled. Because I'm like, okay, if I go back and text it, I want to make sure that it was first.
Right.
But I skipped it because I couldn't remember.
Okay.
B, in the course of his career, did N ever work in any art form other than sculpture? I like that this is mild, whereas he's saying like anything else. But once again, I couldn't remember this.
Yeah.
Yeah, I couldn't either.
So
Yeah.
I just skipped over it. C, what are some materials other than metal that N used in his sculptures after ending his association? I couldn't remember. I'm like, I don't even remember us talking about anything.
Yeah.
But then I got to C or D, and it was said during his lifetime, was there any? So I like that it's mild. It's saying like any kind of favorable critical response to his creation. And I had remembered us at the end saying that when he's the goat. And so it was pretty easy for me to select D.
Right.
And then E, at any time in his career, considered a transparent. I don't even remember translucent being mentioned.
Yeah.
Right. Because he received recognition for his work.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't like this because none of these are like predicting questions. I picked a terrible passage. I mean, a hard passage, but there's more like, anyways, okay. So for question 18, the passage offers the strongest evidence that the author would agree with which are the following. So I loosely predict something here. Like, what do I think of the author before I go into it? Like, does the author like N or dislike N?
He likes it. Mm-hmm.
Like, I think he thinks he's impressive, right?
Yeah.
So then I would go into it. So go ahead and answer 18. I think this might be the hardest passage of all time, honestly. Okay.
Oh shit.
So, does the author think the reason that he is so amazing is because he's had no formal science training?
No. Doesn't even mention.
But he just, but I mean,
I know.
he
I know why you picked this answer.
Oh,
The whole thing is about he has the science mind. He has the science.
Right. Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
But he's not a great artist because like it's not impressive that he's a great because he has no formal training. Like, right? Would you agree? Like, it's not.
Yeah, I was in between B and D too, but then I remember what you said. Go with the milder one. So from now on, that's what I'm gonna do.
No, when
Okay,
in doubt,
yeah, me too.
When in doubt, go
I'll go with Mal.
But you see, this is saying that the reason he is impressive is because he doesn't have scientific training. No, like he's impressive because he has the scientific mind.
True, yeah.
Like the skit, like not, but it's not like if he had, how would scientific training help him become a better sculptor? Right. I mean, maybe it could, but
no, I get your thought. I get what you're saying.
DN was more interested. So I like this because this is a relative term, right? It's pretty mild. More interested in addressing or answering like the aesthetic questions than in maintaining a consistent artistic style. Yeah, the guy didn't want to get bored.
Yeah.
I thought D was pretty easy when you think about like when in doubt, go mild. And when you think about more interested, it's relative. And he doesn't have, we don't have to be like an A. We don't have to be significantly more. It just says more interested. I think we can safely conclude that he was more interested in like finding new things than just doing the same old thing day after day. All right, so let's go now to number 21. No, 22, because this is another about the author question. So go ahead and try this one. I'll have, because my answer choice here, I don't know why. I don't really see it, but I know all the other ones are wrong.
Oh, I picked A.
A.
Yeah,
I'm doing it at the same time. Yes, thank you.
Yes, I agree. I read A and I didn't like think right away. I was like, oh yeah, that week. Maybe you guys did. I didn't.
No, I didn't know. Like that's why I just asked you. Like I didn't know what, how.
Did you know,
well, I read the other ones and then obviously A is the best one, but I thought that maybe if Brancusi was the first, I was going to ask you to go up to see the day, but if Brancusi was the first one that, you know, experimented with it, that means that Noguchi didn't.
Right. I didn't catch that at first though, because I was reading it and I was like, what does that matter? But it matters because he's interested in solving new problems, where if he already did it, then that goes against this whole that N only wants to do new things. But I skipped it. So how I do choices is I say love it, leave it, hate it. This one I left it, so I would have given an L, like a leave it, or like pass. And then
I
B,
swear, I just did that. Like honest to God,
like
none of the other ones made sense to me.
And like instead of sitting there convincing myself, this is how you save time. I know the other ones are wrong. I'm going with A. I'm not going to figure out why A is right in my time section, but in my blind review, I am.
Gotcha. Yeah.
That's how I didn't realize how much I did that until I started tutoring. But B, after completing the portrait, he only produced a few. Like, no, that would strengthen it because he got bored with it and moved on. That makes sense to me.
Yeah.
C.
And then in the last paragraph it say that like after his recognition, like he went on to do more new things.
It doesn't contradict.
So like it doesn't contradict anything.
Like this one, see, I was like, what does it matter if he knew that he was well? I was thinking, well, maybe trying to contradict that he doesn't care about fame, but no, like he could still want to work for him and know that he was successful, but he might not want to work for him because he's successful. There could be another reason. I'm like, so that doesn't do anything. D, I know I would say being entirely abstract would support this whole idea of who he is. And then B, I was like, no, like, does it matter?
Nicole, do you know why I crossed off E first? You know why, right?
Yeah.
Because you just said in the last question, like, no, who gives a fuck about scientific training?
Who cares?
So I was like, immediately that's out.
So, you have to have, I tell people, you have to have attitude while reading these passages. You have to take opinions. you can't apply your opinion to the answer choices. But I have so many, like, I have opinions about Ian. I want to be friends with him. I'm like, this guy just wants to solve problems. He probably has like this cool, like swanky little house. Like, I'm picturing it. Okay. I want you both guys to do 19, 20, and 21 right now, completely on your own. And let me know when you're finished.
I will say for 19, it was language for me between B and C. So I could see how I can be wrong or right.
Okay,
But
yes,
it was
okay.
just language.
So
It
what
was language.
okay, so this is one that you can loosely predict or paraphrase. Like, what was the relationship between Ford and N?
So my thing was with them is that with Ford, going back to like the passage, I don't know, like I think didn't he ask him? It's like because it's said that basically with the whole like thingy he wanted to make it, he gave
He created something that N needed, right?
the end needed. So it says he suggested it to him for him
No,
to use
no,
it in
no, no, no.
order.
The other person suggested it. He
I
suggested it.
wasn't Ford.
Yes, remember this was the 2 comma thing? And Ford, I was like, why do we bring up Ford? And it was because Ford created something that solved that money problem.
Right,
Like Henry Ford, like the car guy.
right.
So you
Oh, I
said
read it wrong.
an expert skier begins experimenting with the use of a new type of material in the soles of a ski boots after a shoe manufacturer. Oh, yes, because you thought he suggested it.
Yeah,
No,
yeah.
no, like it's not the shoe manufacturer suggested it. It would be as if some other person suggested
I
that the shoe
understand.
manufacturer did it.
Okay. That was my flaw. That was a flaw in me because I
Well,
thought.
all right, and C, a producer of shipping containers begins using a new type of strapping material, which a rock climbing expert Seuss finds useful as an especially strong or reliable. Yes, because we're saying like these two things aren't necessarily related, but the rock climber finds it useful for his industry or whatever.
Okay.
And you both got the other two correct. Were you struggling with either of these ones?
With 2021, I have to say I was in between. I was a little in between like C, D, and E, to be honest.
Okay.
21. I ended up picking E. I'm gonna tell you why so D is because I thought maybe personal favor. I was like, we don't know if it was personal favor, and we don't know if.
Yeah, we don't know. No, literally that word is why it's wrong.
Okay, personal favor. And then C, I don't know if like N didn't think it was innovative, so I
No,
kind of
we
went
have
back.
no idea.
No idea. We had no idea. Yeah. Yeah. That's why I chose E because I was like, we had no idea.
The better you get at just crossing off wrong answer choices, you will do so much better. Where like so many times I don't know why they're right. Like it's not that I don't know why, I just don't take the time to figure out why it's right.
Gotcha. I think I let my self-doubt sometimes like make me waste time between two answer choices.
Yes, and that's where, yeah. That's why it's so good to do timed, and like some people say you only do time practice. I disagree with that because sometimes you have to do untimed practice to learn.
True, yeah. I just do both. I do timed and on time.
You have to do both. You have to get used to doing it timed. You have to get used to the pressure. But if you can't get the score you want untimed, what makes you think you're going to be able to get it timed?
Right.
Yeah. And I think for me too, it's like really like 19 was like a flipper for me because I was really between B and C. Like I was so in between the two. I just saw the word.
Did you predict an answer?
For me?
Mm-hmm.
I predicted, well, I was between B and C, but I just went with B because I felt like it matched the word. It matched the word.
So this one, like I'm big on predicting. Like I would just go back and I would, if I couldn't remember who Ford was, I would like, okay, what was Ford? And I would say, oh, and then I don't read because like once you read the answer choices, it's easy to get confused.
Okay. So predicting first.
So loosely predict, like, okay, what was this relationship? F created something that N needed.
Right.
Okay, and then 20.
No, that one was pretty straightforward.
Or
me.
E,
Yeah,
sorry, why
pretty sure.
E21E was right. It was
Yeah.
unlike the sculptures that N had helped B to produce, and that the later's aesthetic effects did not depend. Yeah,
Yeah,
because
agree.
that's pretty easy, right? Because before they didn't have this ability, and now they do.